Hi, my name is Mohammed and welcome to Startup Grind Cape Town. Tonight we're interviewing Franz Struwig, who is the founder and CEO of Ikubu, which was acquired by Garmin. Welcome and I hope you enjoy the evening.
Hi, my name is Stellenbosch. I'm currently the founder of Alumni Valley. It's a small online platform which offers small businesses a chance to advertise their business. I'm hoping to get a lot of connections there. I've already met a good friend here telling me a lot about startups and how they work out, so I'm hoping to get a lot more from them.
I'm Petrus, I'm from Timbuktu and I sell groceries on an Android app. So I'm hoping to get some customers for my Android app.
Clearly, you can call me MTA. I'm coming from a message trust organization. We are doing a consultation using a lean startup approach. We are community-based, prison-based. We're assisting ex-offenders start their own businesses when they are outside. Yeah, so what I'm hoping to learn here is how to take my business and the business and the franchise that we are working with from ground up to 100%. So yeah, that's what we're here to learn.
I'm Amanda. I'm Norma. We're part of the Telcom InnoTech program. So we're the InnoTech candidates. And we're here to network and gain the exposure in the startup businesses.
Hi, my name is Joshua Hickman. I'm from the Social Dynamics. I'm just hoping to learn how to get growing companies as a startup as we are quite a new company.
I'm Noor, I'm from Quickassist, and I'm also hoping to learn how to get my startup with the ground.
Franz Struwig is the CEO and co-founder of Ikubu, a Stellenbosch-based tech company that was acquired by Garmin in 2015. He's also the head of R&D for Garmin in Stellenbosch. He has a computer engineering degree from the University of Pretoria and has completed an MBA at the University of Stellenbosch. Now, if Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie was here in the audience or speaking, everybody be on their feet and screaming and shouting for these celebrities. What about the real entrepreneurs out there, the guys who are making a difference in this country, the guys who are creating jobs and innovating? So I want everybody on their feet, and give France a big welcome.
Sure. Thank you.
Welcome, France.
Hi Mo. Yeah, I haven't been given the Brad Pitt treatment very often, so thanks.
Did you enjoy that welcome?
It was fantastic. Walking on sunshine. That's a hashtag start CPT moment. Yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it because it's all downhill from here. Where were you born and were you entrepreneurial from a young age?
I was born in Pretoria. Not that entrepreneurial from a young age, but always I had a sort of a dream to one day give it a go.
And what made you study engineering?
So yeah, I'm very passionate about technology. So that's always been the case. I always liked tinkering with things and programming and cracking games. So it sort of just felt natural at that stage to go into software and my dad being a civil engineer, it just at that stage you sort of almost take a dartboard and sort of decide what you're going to do. So engineering just seemed natural.
And after university, what did you do? You went to work, I understand?
Yeah. So after finishing my studies, I went into the cryptography field. So that was sort of working for a communication security company in Pretoria.
Okay.
Building some interesting software and hardware solutions to secure communications.
And that took me down the rabbit hole, sort of gave me a bit of confidence in software engineering and also a bit of mathematical background.
And how long were you in that company for?
About 3 years. And at that time I started getting a bit sort of worried with the status quo. You know, you spend so much time at work that you really want to be at a place where you can express yourself. And yeah, I was feeling at that point that, you know, even though we're doing really cool technical work, the culture just wasn't such a great fit. And that was about the time where Google was starting to explode. So I think Google inspired me to start looking at something else.
Well, I know every engineer that I know wanted to leave corporate after watching Iron Man and being inspired by Tony Stark. Did he have a influence in your life?
No, not specifically. No, for me it was more about living congruently with your values. So, you know, I value people. So I want to be in a workplace where you can have lunch with your colleagues and share stories and have authentic relationships, friendships, that is.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that to me is more important. You know, a place where people can have fun, a place where I think engineers are very creative by nature, and yeah, so really a place where engineers can run the show and can express themselves. So, in terms of inspiration, I think I was sort of probably more inspired by spending a year overseas after school, before studying, and the interesting things there was just the variety. You know, the being able to work in a fish factory or be a waiter, do construction work, do websites in the evenings. You're always challenged, always doing interesting stuff, and I just felt like in a you know, a lot of jobs just really put you in such a small little cage where we're actually about so much more.
How did the company culture influence your career? I understand you are quite unhappy with being boxed in that certain corporate culture.
Yeah, so let me just rephrase that. So I've got a strong belief that some people are always happy wherever they are, and some people are always unhappy. So I was not unhappy, but I did see that there could be so much more. And I think you always, you know, when you start, you've got a lot of energy. You want to influence company culture. You want to influence strategy, and it's pretty frustrating if you try and do that, and the company is not specifically open, you know, to a junior engineer having that kind of influence. You know, if there's a lot of momentum in the wrong direction. So I think that was more of just a wake-up call for me that actually in life there are no dress rehearsals. You know, this is it. So I'm not going to wait for someone to make it happen. You know, let me actually do it. So there was a bit of a push maybe for me to go ahead and make it happen.
And what happened afterwards? You were unhappy, well, unhappy at your workplace. What motivated you to take the next step? And I mean, what did you do then for your next step?
Yeah, so firstly, the biggest problem for any entrepreneur is fear. So I think a lot of you would have experienced that incredible fear of going over the abyss, leaving your salary and your day job. And so I tried to make it a bit easier by securing something on the side, securing the first project, and starting sort of in the evenings playing in Python and just sort of getting something going. The project was to develop a device for the CSIR that can measure wool thickness. And they had this problem. They were shining light through wool, and they would have these patterns, these circular patterns, and you could use those patterns to now calculate the mean diameter and all sorts of things of the wool. And they needed some image processing. And that sort of gave me the first impetus to be able to start something, at least get some income, get a few references. So it wasn't really a business based on a very strong technical vision. It was really about having a strong vision about culture. A friend of mine joined in the business, and we just decided, well, we'll do whatever, but we're going to have an awesome culture. And that strategy happened to pay off, because it just so happens that a lot of very smart people get to choose where they work, and they want to be at a place where they can express themselves and where they can have fun, and we were able to draw in quite a lot of good talent at that stage.
And this was all in Pretoria.
Yeah. Yeah, so we started in Pretoria.
And that's Ikubu.
That was Ikubu. Ikubu means hippopotamus. Okay, so we wanted to leave deep footprints in Africa, have a positive legacy, be the change in a sense. And yeah, so I think when we started there, part of having your own business is really about being able to control, certain factors around culture, where you are, what you do. So very early on we decided, well, we can choose geographically wherever we want to be. And yeah, very quickly, if you look in South Africa, the Stellenbosch, Cape Town area is definitely the place to be. So we took a trip down, a bit of a scouting mission, and yeah, we ended up in Somerset West.
You started Ikubu as a consulting firm initially. Why consulting?
Yeah, I think in South Africa, venture capital at that stage was really not a big thing. We didn't have a lot of role models of people trying to develop a product. In fact, we were quite discouraged. People at that stage, mentors, were saying, there's no way you're going to develop a product in South Africa. You have to do consulting.
Yeah.
We always had the dream of developing products, but we felt that consulting gave us a way of honing our skills, getting a better sense of the market, so you can actually get to the real problems in the market. It grew our network, and it also gave us funds then to allow us to invest in products. So we were going for the virtuous cycle kind of approach, which was more, we felt, sustainable than just chasing a single idea. And I don't know theoretically or in startup terms if that's really a good approach. But we felt we could build a sustainable business that's not based on just like a one-hit kind of idea. Because we had many failures, which...
Talk to me about those failures. What are you referring to?
So I think because we had this consulting business, we were able to take chances. We were able to try out things. And so the first product we did was actually when load shedding hit. And so that was 2008. And within, I think, a week from load shedding, we realized that there's an opportunity here. Someone needs to write an app to notify people of their schedules, because there was a big, at that stage, municipalities were all over the place.
Yeah.
So yeah, we wrote this app, and it did really well, and there were companies wanting to buy the business, and suddenly it looked really great. We had a couple of thousand subscribers, and then load shedding stopped. Well, we were happy either way, I guess.
Yes, you can never trust them.
Yeah, so that was the first one. But yeah, we also had a product we built with a client, and the client ended up not paying and reneging on us. And I think with a micron meter that we developed for the CSIR, we had a bit of a co-ownership deal, and that wasn't ever really commercialized properly. Yeah, so there were quite a few. We went at some stage. We went into dabbling in an online advertising platform, but we learned a lot of lessons through this.
Yeah.
Some of the lessons were around really focusing your business. So even though we were really enjoying innovation and doing crazy things, we realized that we have to try and focus this innovation around at least some core competencies.
Yeah.
So we started focusing on computer vision and radar. Started really focusing our innovation around that, focusing our professional development around that, focusing our networks around that, and that gave us a lot of positive momentum, sort of a virtuous cycle.
Now, When you guys started Ikubu, did you have a long-term vision from the beginning, or was you just taking it as it comes and letting it run? I mean, running with it.
Yeah, so we saw ourselves as a learning organization in a very uncertain world. So we knew that, I mean, for a tech startup, 10 years is eternity. So there was no way that we're gonna try and make those bets. But we did have a very good discipline of at least annually having a proper strategy breakaway.
Yeah.
And what's nice about a startup environment is you can really involve the whole team. Because you've got some of these really smart people in the team that may not be an MBA, but actually they've got incredible insight into technology, into business, and they really enjoy getting involved in that. So we involved the whole team.
And who was the team, if I may ask?
Well, we had actually mostly engineers. Yeah, so we ended up being 10 engineers. We headhunted the top performer of my year group when I was at Pretoria University in the computer engineering department.
Yeah.
And so Nolan van Heerden is his name. And he's a really good radar engineer, long-term thinker, very visionary guy. And he sort of formed our technical center of gravity, and that really pulled in a lot of talent as well, because I think those A players really do pull the other A players. But Nolan was very involved in strategy. So yeah, we were always learning from our mistakes, improving our strategy, and we actually used the objectives and key results system that Google also used.
Okay. And what?
Which is really about, in the beginning of the year, setting very clear goals and objectives for the end of the year, and then breaking that down quarterly. And the whole purpose is not to get too stuck into scorecards and to be too corporate, but you want to have everybody in the company keep the overarching goals in mind. And that really helped us to be quite focused. Initially, we were all over the place, but we sort of started growing as business people as well, because initially we were just engineers.
Basically, rebels who didn't want to work for a company.
Yeah.
When you guys created the Backtracker, you weren't really a startup. You were running for about, 5 years by then?
Yeah, probably 5 years.
And how did it start? How did you guys come across the idea?
So something cool that we did, which I think is quite unique, is we really got into theater improv.
Okay. Could you explain to the audience what is theater improv for those who don't know?
Yeah. So just one step back. So we realized that innovation is really difficult. Firstly, it's difficult to find real problems. It's not so easy. And then to come up with radically innovative solutions is also not that easy. And so we got a consultant on board. It's a friend of ours that was an improv facilitator. And he started to do improv in the office to sort of help us to sort of incorporate certain principles into our DNA. Principles of improv are things like this, suspending judgment. So typical things you hear in brainstorming sessions, which nobody can do because they don't know how to do it. Or building on other people's ideas, so yes and. Being in the moment, being intuitive, things like that. But theater improv just happens to have a whole bunch of exercises that actually reinforce those principles.
Okay.
So we actually still today in Garmin, every morning we start with improv. Anybody in the team will suggest a game, and it's all about really growing the understanding of these principles. So maybe it's just a really silly exercise, which I have done somewhere before. If you all can stand.
We love making you stand.
So if this is now, I'm going to hold a lightsaber, imaginary lightsaber that is infinitely long, and I'm going to try and maybe swipe it over the audience. So zoom, So some of you understand improv, so you act appropriately. Okay, thank you.
So essentially, every morning in Garmin, you'll play Star Wars.
We love Star Wars. But okay, so I mean, improv. It's maybe for us, it's pretty cool. You know, it helps us to get out of our shells and to sort of loosen the screw a little bit. And I think we were in that headspace where we were doing all these crazy things, and a lot of problems were coming in. People would as they pick up a problem, we would throw that into our innovation pipe. And one of the problems was that someone was cycling in Stellenbosch on the wrong side of the road. And you know, the reason that this elderly gentleman gave was that he's just too afraid of being hit from behind. So just another problem into the innovation funnel. And yeah, I think what our process allowed then for, if someone was passionate about an idea, so if you have a real problem, you're passionate about an idea, then you pitch it to the team. So the minimum requirement is you have to set up like an A4 kind of pitch. Just one page, pitch it to the team. If someone doesn't even have the drive to do that, then the idea is stillborn. So Nolan pitched it to the team. We felt it wasn't a great idea, but in this improv mode, you know, we said, well, take a month, do something.
Was that part of the company culture that anybody in the team can just pitch an idea, you guys say if it's a good idea or bad, and then go with it?
Yeah, through trial and error, we built up this innovation pipe, which basically said that the first, you know, we defined the steps in our funnel, and the first step was you have to pitch it, then you have to Google the hell out of it. So we had like a 2-day Google, basically, you know, because 90% of the time you Google something, you find there are 10 other companies doing exactly the same thing. So it's sort of a reality check, you know, and then you've got a kind of minimum viable product. I guess we were sort of slightly before the lean movement, but we were following similar kind of principles.
Okay. And one of the requirements was whoever had the idea had to develop a prototype as well.
Yeah, the product champion had to be involved, because similar to entrepreneurship, someone needs to provide the energy. And there's so much resistance to anything new that, you know, if there's not someone that's really personally committed and invested, then it's just never going to happen.
Initially, as you said, a lot of the guys, including yourself, thought it was a stupid idea.
Yeah. I didn't actually verbalize that. But yeah, that's a real killer for innovation. But what we found was that often, you know, if you do these, you chase these crazy ideas, then something else flows out of it. So we've learned to allow engineers to actually chase those ideas up to a point, because we all see ourselves as investors. I think in a startup, you need to see yourself as an investor, as a business owner. And when you make decisions about investing in a product, everybody has to stand back and you put on a different hat. You can even do it physically. And then say, well, is this a good investment? Are we, you know, do we really want to, what is the opportunity cost of chasing this? So we tried to have that kind of investment process, which inevitably led to a lot of products not getting past the second hurdle. You know, it becomes increasingly more stringent.
So the team member came back with a prototype and you guys were pleased with it. Daniel decided to create a business model around it.
Yeah, so we had 2 interns at that point. We just threw it at them and said, well, come up with a business model. You know, like, we don't really know how to do business models, but they were very, very interested in doing that and phoning bicycle shops from the US and setting up 10-year projections and having lots of fun. But yeah, we thought at that stage we need to get funding for this. And our thinking at that point was that, you know, if anyone else is not willing to invest in this, surely it's not a great idea. Which was obviously very flawed thinking.
Could you explain to the audience quickly what the product actually is? A bit of an elevator pitch.
Yeah, so the problem when you cycle, there's often a lot of things that's stealing your attention. So cognitive load, there's wind, cars coming from the front, And then every so often, a car sneaks up on you from behind and surprises you. And it just happens to be the #1 cause of death on the road for cyclists, being hit from behind. So we developed this little radar that you clip onto the back of your bicycle. It's got a range of about 150 meters, and it notifies you when cars approach from behind. So you've got a little display on your handlebars, bunch of LEDs, and each LED represents about 10 meters. So you can see the cars approaching, sort of scroll up this little display. And you can also then see multiple cars. And on the radar unit, we've got a backlight or a tail light that then communicates with the cars. So it will increase its flicker rate as the car approaches, increase the brightness. And we try to build in some intelligence around threat levels and things.
And there was no product like this in the world.
No. So I sort of assumed it's because it's, impossible, or it's, just really difficult to do something like that in a consumer market.
Yeah.
But and it just so happens that the VCs also thought it was not going to work. So we tried to get funding for a year.
Yeah.
And getting funding is really difficult, especially probably 3 years ago in South Africa.
And especially the hardware market.
Yes. So I think people had a very strong belief that it's impossible for a South African company to commercialize a consumer product, electronic consumer product.
Why do you think there's such a negative perception on hardware?
Well, I think there's also a bit of realism because it's very tough. The challenge is that with hardware, you've got a lot of upfront cost. So with software scales easily. Everybody wants to invest in Facebook, wants to invest in something that's can just scale infinitely with very limited upfront cost, where hardware requires quite a bit of funding to be able to get your initial stock, to set up your manufacturing, set up your automated testing. Then you've got a lot of compliance. Software, there's no compliance, very limited compliance. Where with hardware, you need to conform to certain, in every country you want to sell, you've got to ship the product. So there's a lot of learning curve. But hardware is slightly fashionable now. So I think it's becoming a bit easier probably to get investment in hardware.
So it was quite difficult for you guys to go out and get funding. In fact, for 1 year or so, you put a stop to product and just went out and tried to fund this idea of yours.
Yeah, we had one engineer sort of on the side tinkering with it a little bit, but we were confident we were going to get funding. And a VC would tell us, okay, you just need to do some market validation, then we'll give you funding. We build a unit, we get market validation, and then they say, sorry, you're asking for too little money. Because I think actually the VCs were, they were sort of interested, but they didn't really have money in a sense. Very very cash strapped. So they were playing with us. And
this was in 2000 and
that was about 3-4 years ago. Yeah, probably 2012, 2011.
Before it became cool to be a VC.
Yeah. Yes. So it was more like private equity, I think.
Yeah.
But we learned a lot in the process, and one of the things we learned was that we should not be looking for VC. We could have already built this product. So we took 3 months, and we built it. We built a miniaturized version.
With no funding.
With no funding. And it was actually very easy to do. So big lesson, another hashtag moment there. But really, you should not be looking for funding if it's not absolutely necessary, because it takes so much energy.
You could win a watch like that, hey? Hashtag.
So, yeah, we didn't get funding. We built the product, but now we had this problem. We see ourselves as these Uber engineers. How are we going to take this to market? What I cut out there. Okay, there we go. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm just going to go on. Stop me if you can't hear me. So we didn't know how to take this to market. We did some research on the bicycle industry. Okay, thanks. Yeah, we did some research, and it was clear to us, excuse me, that you needed quite a significant brand to really succeed in the consumer market, in the bicycle industry. And we were going to have to get another big brand on board. So we decided to go to Japan. We were talking to a company called Cat Eye, and we were very excited about getting them on board, because in Japan, innovation was pretty slow. They were really keen to sort of reinvigorate the company, and we thought that we'd found our savior. You know, Japan is going to take this product and they're going to roll it out. We're going to just, you know, get license sort of fees, and it's going to just be wonderful. So we went there. We got a deal with Cat Eye, but a year later, the product was still not on the shelves, and actually they hadn't moved at all. And the penny dropped on us then that nobody is ever going to put in more energy and passion, you know, into taking your product to market than you yourself. You know, just because it's a big company doesn't mean they actually have the capacity also. Big companies have lots of products, very limited capacity, and also probably not a lot of people that are super driven and sort of invested in taking this to market. So we knew we had to do something else at that point.
So realizing that funding was difficult, realizing that you guys had to take the product to market by yourself and not giving it that important task to someone else, you went the crowdfunding route.
Yeah, crowdfunding was sort of a desperate attempt, I think, to get something out of this IP. So at that point, we were part of the Grindstone Accelerator,
Okay.
which is something I can recommend to.
By Knife Capital.
Yes, I can recommend an accelerator experience to any startup, because it just matures your thinking a little bit about some of the strategic issues, I guess, facing the company at that point, and really also about being prepared for an exit or for some kind of liquidity event. Yeah. And so we knew that this IP is valuable to someone.
It was a good idea.
We had to get it out there. We had the first mover advantage at that point. And we knew there was a limited window of opportunity. So we had to just make a lot of noise, get the right partners. Even though we knew, you know, we had this learning that we had to take it to market ourselves, we also knew that it's going to be a very limited window of opportunity. So we had to make the most of it. So crowdfunding, I don't know if you have been involved in crowdfunding. A couple of hands. Okay, so those were the gray hairs. Crowdfunding is really crazy. One of the most awesome experiences of my life. So the thing about crowdfunding is it's really public. So there are no, there's no mercy. If your crowdfunding campaign fails, then you will never get funding again for that product, because that's a really good proof for anybody that people aren't really keen on that. So you have to make sure it succeeds. The problem was that we were very much naive. So we thought, well, you have to be honest, ask how much money you need, and go for it from there. So we were asking for way too much money, but we were also quite strategic. So we were targeting a specific geographic location in the US, the Boston, New York area. That was sort of our Trojan horse, knowing that if we do this crowdfunding campaign, we can actually get into the network in the US just based on this proof of what we can do. So we were really focused more on also the additional spin-offs of doing consulting work there. I think with the Rand, it's really good to get some offshore work. And at that stage, we were doing work in Australia, in Saudi Arabia, and we knew it was really important for the company to do lucrative work, because then you can really focus on building your own products. So crowdfunding focuses the mind. So initially, we had to create an awesome video. We had to totally rebrand the product to have an awesome identity, because if you look at these really successful crowdfunding campaigns, you'd see that it's the logos, the and everything just works. I mean, you're from a marketing background, you know, it's just next level what these guys do. So we had to be next level, but we didn't have a fund behind us. So we got a lot of people involved from our network, and also on risk. So we would have a designer just starting her own company, and incentivize her with some upside. So we would give her like 50% of a fee, but like a 5 times upside, you know, if we succeed. And I think that really helped us a lot. So we got really awesome content in the process.
So once you decided that you're going the crowdfunding route, Ikubu almost became a marketing agency in itself, because you are so focused on getting the message out that you guys are this really cool company. It had to change from engineering company to a marketing agency.
Yeah, so that's a challenge if you're self-funded. We were still doing all our other projects. But there's also a big difference. There's a before and after. Before actually pressing the button to start the crowdfunding, it's maybe 1 or 2 people that's really doing everything. You know, so I was focused on the crowdfunding, getting everything right. But the moment you press the button, we had this big launch in Technopark, Stellenbosch. It was so nice, you know, all the companies we knew were there. And then the following morning, I wake up and I quickly check how many units have we sold. It's like 8 units. And I've bought 2 of those units. You know, and my dad, I know he's bought something as well. So I was really worrying, and that's quite a sobering moment to realize this thing's not going to just sell by itself. So selling is difficult. So the whole team who were doing their normal job, and everybody had to get some kind of a crowdfunding job as well, or responsibility. So, you know, we weren't big on social media, but someone had to do Twitter, someone had to do Facebook, and being engineers, you know, we project managed this whole thing then. So we had
charts and everything.
bi-weekly meetings, you know, goals, how many LinkedIn posts are you going to make, how many radio interviews, TV interviews. It's just the list of things you have to think about is crazy. And the amount of interest you get in a successful crowdfunding campaign is mind-blowing. So we were almost every night talking to either VCs in the US, distributors, just so much interest.
And this was at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Not quite. But yeah, we didn't have a lot of time for anything else. So it's a crazy experience, but if you do it well, you really elevate your profile. And you know, so Knife Capital really used this term of punching above your weight. And that's what we try to do. So we try to just really establish our brand in a way that it looks like this company is really next level. They're, you know, their team, so they've got an awesome team. Everything they're doing is considered. Nothing is just like half done. And I think people really got that feeling looking at the campaign, that wow, these guys know what they're doing. Yeah, that was, everything just really sat well together.
So you guys decided not to use the normal crowdfunding websites, Kickstarter, and you went with something called Dragon Innovation. If someone in the audience has a hardware product and wants to go the crowdfunding route, why would they choose Dragon Innovation, a crowdfunding platform that not many have heard about, compared to something like Kickstarter?
Okay, so the context there is that our primary strategy was to get into the network. So Dragon Innovation is a lot more personal. They do a hardware due diligence on the company beforehand. And you know, I went to the US through Dragon Innovation, met lots of companies.
So you actually went to physically meet them?
Yeah. That was during the campaign. So that was sort of the Trojan horse part of our strategy. But they since changed their platform to support companies in doing crowdfunding instead of actually being a crowdfunding platform. But a problem for a hardware company is credibility, because a lot of people sell snake oil. And so what's nice about Dragon is they give you credibility by reference, or by association. So if Scott Miller says these guys have a product that works, everybody in Boston in the tech scene, you know, they're on board. So that opened a lot of doors for us.
So at that same time, you were keeping Ikubu alive with your consulting business. Where did you guys hit lucky? How did you guys get in contact with Garmin?
So yeah, that came through quite a few routes. Um,
Was it a campaign or was it just luck?
So there was a lot of luck. You know, I also see God's fingerprints sort of all over the place there looking back. But so if we look at Knife Capital, they helped us to set up this, they call it an exit universe. So it's a document. We have all the companies or logos of the companies that you think that will possibly buy your company. We were thinking buy the technology or maybe partner with you. So we had this document. And so the first thing we did was we had LinkedIn ads for these companies. Garmin was in the middle of that universe. So we knew that they were a really good fit.
Yeah.
But that was, I guess at that stage, we didn't really know. But we had these ads running on LinkedIn. So if you were an executive in Garmin, you would have seen an Ikubu or a Backtracker ad. So that was the first step, just in getting some awareness. And then when I was in the US, one of our campaign didn't do so well. We were struggling. Okay, so we had to throw the whole kitchen sink at it to try and get over the line, because we knew that would be the end of the product.
Yeah.
And one of our crowdfunding backers suggested that we do a review on a blog, a well-known blog, DC Rainmaker.
Okay.
So I contacted him, Rainmaker, and he just happened to be in the US at that time. And he told me, well, send me a unit, and I had a few demo units,
Yeah.
and he'd do a review then. So I sent him a unit. I told him, just please don't use it like in the rain or anything, because it's just a prototype.
Yeah.
And he was in Seattle, and those of you who know Seattle, I mean, it rains there all the time. So in the week that he was there, it was just raining constantly. But he disregarded my advice. He just went ahead, tested this thing, and it just turned out that it worked really well, even in the rain, and he gave us an excellent review. And everybody in Garmin follows DC Rainmaker.
Yeah.
So that was our second sort of route in. Then we, in our desperation, our engineers were selling units in Stellenbosch at coffee shops on a Sunday morning, sort of just trying to generate some buzz. So as
Hustling.
cyclists, yeah, hustling. So as cyclists would come in for their coffee, you know, this shy engineer would sort of, please sir, can I show you something? And people were really dismissive and very rude. It's very tough to sell. But there was this one lady that was really good to us there, and she bought a couple of units, and she was actually a Stanford MBA. Gave us some advice and decided to take a unit with her to the US to show it to some friends. And through that route, so it's quite a long story, but we got to a Garmin tester that she showed it to in the US. So we had an email address then. And we used that address to set up a demonstration at a trade show in Europe, Eurobike.
Yeah.
So we had to extend our crowdfunding campaign because we weren't making it. So we had to keep appearances up, extend it by another month, which allowed us to go to 2 additional trade shows. And we did the demo, and that's the thing about snake oil. Companies like Garmin don't really take a product seriously until they've seen it demoed. And at Eurobike, when they actually saw this product and they saw, well, this not in a stall, they took it to the streets and said, well, can you show us, does this work? And we went outside and it worked, and that makes all the difference. If you've got a product that works, that's very rare in, I think, in American startups.
Do you think, as you mentioned that in American startups, a product that actually works, do you think South Africans, we undervalue our engineers?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, our engineers are really world class. And what I've seen is that our people can do a lot with very little. And you know, with those constraints, you're forced to be creative, forced to really become multi-skilled. You know, you can't afford to have like an engineer for every discipline in the company. So your software guy becomes an algorithm guy, becomes a hardware guy. And for innovation, that's really good if you've got that kind of those abilities in house. So being part of Garmin now, you know, I can really say that our engineers are right up there with the best.
So the guys from Garmin enjoyed your product, they liked it. When were the talks about getting acquired start? I mean, when did it start? Was it just, hey, come down to America, we want to acquire you, or did they come down to South Africa?
So, you know, initially it's a bit of cat and mouse, I guess. They didn't state that they want to acquire us, but after meeting in Eurobike, they said, well, you know, it would be nice if we could stop by when we go to Vegas, because we were going to another trade show there.
Yeah.
And Garmin is in Kansas. But I knew at that point that obviously they're not interested in licensing our technology.
Yeah.
You know, there's only one play here. They buy us or they build a product that's going to kill us. So
it was a risk.
We had to get them to buy us, basically. That was the only way. Because we couldn't stand against them. So we went with the attitude of just being really open and honest. And I think from the get-go, we showed them all the flaws in our system, all the the patent issues, how we've gotten around that.
Yeah.
And I think they appreciated that honesty initially.
And you don't find many startups actually going out there and being honest with when they are in the situations. They normally, hey, we're the biggest company in the world and we have no problems with our products.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to have a mix of humility, honesty, and also a bit of, I guess, I won't call it boastfulness, but you have to present yourself really well. That's maybe something that South Africans don't do all that often. That's really punching above your weight. So I think we did that as well. We tried to really present ourselves well. We had a really good presentation, and we went all out. We really pulled all the stops to try and come across as really professional and give them a good demo. But then afterwards, after the sort of meeting with them, we thought it didn't go that well. So we were sitting in some taco place in Kansas, drinking a beer afterwards, thinking, this is not going to happen. And but then the guys called us and said, well, they'd love to meet us for dinner. And because when we left the meeting, we also left them a unit.
Yeah.
We took a gamble and said, listen, we've come all this way. We might as well just trust these guys. And they could have gone and x-rayed this and try and get something out of it, but we knew it's going to take them a while to reverse engineer this if they really want to.
That was brave.
But we identified the key guy there and told him, listen, you want to go for a ride with this over lunch? Keep it here, and we'll pick it up a bit later. So it was a good opportunity then to also touch base with them later on.
Yeah.
And then it became apparent that they want to talk some more. So my partner had to go to Vegas. I stayed in Kansas, and the story in Garmin goes that they actually then abducted me for the rest of the week. So I stayed there for the week, but I really wanted to be abducted.
Yeah.
So we were going to baseball games and eating everywhere and meeting everybody. But Garmin is a really cool company. They've lots of integrity. Very open and honest, and by the Wednesday they'd already tabled a letter of intent. So they moved very quickly.
Yeah. And they signed a letter. They said, hey, listen, we guys are taking you over. What was the mindset at that time? Were you guys happy, or were you scared that, hey, listen, we're going to start working for a corporate company now, back to where you didn't like working?
Yeah, no, we were pretty elated. I mean, it's as an entrepreneur, you have to enjoy what you're doing. You have to have fun, but you also want to have some upside. You also want to have that liquidity event at some point. And I mean, that's the biggest risk, I guess, for an entrepreneur, is to build this cool company, but then nobody wants to buy your shares at the end of the day. So no, definitely we were very excited about that, and I think financially, but also from a fit perspective, a synergy perspective, because we had offers before that of companies wanting to buy us, but Garmin just, they such a great culture. They've got, and they had all the components that would really allow us to go to the next level. Garmin has an international brand. They're doing more than 80 new products every year. So those are hardware products. So they know how to develop hardware like consistently. They're prolific. They've got it's run by engineers. So the culture just sat very well with us, and I think we're pretty vindicated today.
That's great. At the moment, you are heading the R&D side of things in South Africa. Why didn't you go and work for Garmin in the States?
So Garmin is run by engineers, so they're very pragmatic. They they're not a company that's keen on giving you golden handcuffs or, sort of imposing all these penalties on people for partnering. And they're also pragmatic about appreciating what South Africa has to offer. So they know that we've got a talent pool here. We've got great engineers. They want to also have a part of that. We look at the world from a different angle. We see different problems. And so they're very interested, actually, in the ability that we have to develop novel solutions from here.
You noticed, with 500 startups and even Y Combinator, there's a big focus now on developing countries instead of getting ideas from developed countries such as America or Europe. And you mentioned it now, is that we in South Africa see problems very differently. Did you guys notice that? Was it quite apparent when you were going around the States looking for investment? Were they interested in hey, these South Africans are looking at problems quite differently compared to the States?
Yeah, people were initially very surprised, at the quality of our work and of the high-tech stuff that we've done. Because I think Africa, obviously very stigmatized in that regard. And what's interesting, if you go to Boston and you see what these startups are doing, there are really good startups, but a lot of them are doing very frivolous things. A lot of them are doing things that are not specifically novel, I think, or not specifically viable even. But they allow that. I may not be asking your question completely here, but what I saw there was definitely that our startups have to think about viability. So, we're very practical. I think what surprised a lot of Americans was how far we are down the line. That's probably the biggest thing, where the startups in the US would focus more on marketing. The CEO would be a marketer. Very slick presentations. But I think that's probably the biggest difference. We don't have that luxury of just having hot money running after startups. We have to do something that actually works. It's going to pay for itself, has a possibility of bootstrapping. So people, they appreciate that. They appreciate the fact that we have real companies.
What are some of the lessons that you learned on this journey through building this product and then being acquired by Garmin and now running the R&D for Garmin in Stellenbosch?
Well, I think something for maybe all the people in this room is that we have to think bigger. So don't be content to just be confined to, let's say, Cape Town or Stellenbosch or South Africa. But there's actually so there's so many opportunities out there, and there's if you can bridge the divide with the rest of the world, we are a bit isolated. We have to actively bridge that divide, and if you can do that, I think there are massive opportunities for entrepreneurs in South Africa. So that was quite an eye opener, and I think companies here spend a lot of time focusing on things like structuring for IP, having like an offshore kind of entity and things like that, where actually what I found was that didn't mean anything. There people, if a company is interested in you, that's not going to be their primary concern. They're more interested in what you've done, what you can do. So yeah, don't spend your energy and money on structuring. A big lesson that I learned was that all companies start small. Everybody starts out knowing very little, and we all have to learn. So I want to encourage you to continue learning, as I'm still doing also, and build a culture of learning in your organization. In the long run, that has a really big payoff. In my case, very quickly in the business, I became the roof of the business. We recognized that I'm not a good enough leader. I don't know enough about business. We need to actually get someone else to run the show. And that forced me to do my MBA. And I did that part-time. And that really paid off. And similarly, everybody in the business was always, we were doing Coursera courses and presenting to the rest of the team and just build that culture of learning and growing. And maybe just a last thing from a learning perspective was giving back. So when I was in New York, I was also actively promoting the product, going to lots of networking events, and one of the things I did was next to the between New York and New Jersey, there's this river, and Hudson River, I think, and I had a banner up there promoting the product on a Saturday morning when cyclists were coming past, and it's quite a mission if you're just visiting to get all of that done and to sell like that. But a whole bunch of people from New York, a bunch of people from a startup decided to help me. And that was incredible. This startup company in New York recognizing what I'm doing and getting their spouses and girlfriends on a Saturday morning, helping me to sell to locals there. That was so humbling. And the principle they have there is give first. And that's a real ecosystem principle, which is just amazing. If we can get that going, of everybody focusing on giving first, because it has such a wonderful virtuous cycle that it creates. If we all just try and help whoever you can. So, yeah.
You mentioned about the ecosystem. What would you like to see changed in the South African entrepreneurship ecosystem? Where do you see an improvement?
Yeah, I think we need to celebrate role model or celebrate successes, which we are doing. But there are still a lot of successes that aren't being celebrated. A lot of really big exits and people that are doing really well that nobody knows about. So we need to continue doing that, or continue celebrating at least. Yeah, I think we need to have serial entrepreneurs. So the temptation, I guess, is once you've done well in the business to just sort of just disappear. But yeah, there are some guys that are starting to take on multiple businesses. Guys like Vinny Lingham, and people that not content with just one business, and that's brilliant, because that just creates this incredibly positive momentum. If an entrepreneur can get a good exit, grow a network, and then start again. I want to see more of that.
What's next for Franz Struwig?
So at the moment, I'm really enjoying my time at Garmin. So the nice thing now is we've got this amazing brand. We've got a manufacturing capability that's second to none. All our admin is taken care of, so we don't have to worry about legal stuff, finances.
An engineer's dream.
It's an engineer's dream, basically, yeah. So we have this sandbox, and we're really enjoying it, and we want to try and change the world. So, yeah, at this point, I'm giving my best there.
Any cool new products we should be waiting for?
Absolutely, but nothing I can talk about right now.
I tried, guys. I tried. Okay, we're gonna start taking some questions from the audience. If you have any questions, then just please raise your hands. Sure, gentleman over here. Can you stand, please?
So what he was asking was how do you manage to do an MBA while developing a product? Well, I think firstly, great team. So I didn't develop the product. I just organized a great team around me. Secondly, I think an entrepreneur needs to sacrifice, needs to be willing to work a lot harder than the average guy. So for me, every evening from 10 to 12, I was doing MBA, waking up 5 o'clock in the morning to continue with the day job. So an entrepreneur needs to make those sacrifices, and while still maintaining balance in life, so still making time for family. So it's pretty tough.
Okay, there's a question here, the lady behind you, and then we'll go to this lady over here. Yeah.
Sure, that's a good question. So how do we instill integrity in our business networks? I guess it's probably no silver bullet there. Just about being the change. Yeah, it's very difficult, because we've really tried to conduct ourselves with a lot of integrity. But we've also had moments where it's been a bit gray. It's been very difficult. And not always sure if we ended up on the right side of that equation. But I really can't speak for the ecosystem. I think it's every person needs to really dig deep. And I mean, a big thing now is with a network, with a strong network, there's also a good incentive to have integrity, because the network has a good memory, and the network will reward you or punish you at the end of the day.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi, Franz. Just coming back to your part-time MBA, what do you think were the sort of, let's say, the top 2 or 3 takeaways that you brought out of the MBA that you feel would have leveraged you massively, and how do you think things would have unfolded if you hadn't done a part-time MBA? I'm just interested in how that mix fed into the experience that you had in this whole path that you took.
Great question. Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, definitely didn't do an MBA, and so it is maybe a bit strange. And even in our MBA class, I was probably one of 2 or 3 entrepreneurs. But being an engineer, you know, I was never formally educated in business, and I was always trying to learn, and I put myself in positions to learn. And I just felt I reached a certain point where it was, you know, you want to read books, but you don't know which books to read. And you sort of have these gaps in your knowledge, and you don't have the confidence. So maybe the biggest things for me was confidence. So knowing that, you know, I've got a cum laude MBA, I mixed it with the best, and I'm able to hold my own. So now you're a lot more confident as a business leader. Also, marketing was a revelation for me. We just never invested enough in marketing, and just doing a proper marketing plan in the MBA was incredibly valuable. So that, excuse me, that gave us a lot of clear direction in how we want to position ourselves as a business, and I think that added a lot of value to the business. So if we hadn't done that, and you know, we hadn't really positioned our business so well, I think a lot of value would have been lost. Yeah, but so many learnings through the MBA. You know, it was just really an enriching experience.
Okay, guys, we're going to take 2 more questions. I have this gentleman here in the front, and we'll go with the gentleman in the back.
Hi. Hello. I just wanted to say we just finished like doing a Kickstarter campaign on a product called Lentis H, and you know, we fell horribly, like you just said. It was very difficult. It's like a crash course. But we were very successful in terms of getting the word out and testing the product on the market in terms of getting a few articles out, like Venture Burn and, you know, and others. But my question is really about marketing. I got handpicked by this sort of accelerator, you know, program, just like you said as well up there. Everybody should do it. And I'm almost sort of like towards the end of it. But the marketing momentum kind of just sort of died after the Kickstarter campaign. Like, it just finished like 10 days ago. So my question is, after your crowdfunding, how did you keep the momentum, you know, of your marketing, of your product, you know, while you were busy doing other things, you know, until you got your big next sort of break?
Okay, that's a good question. So in our case, we didn't make our crowdfunding goal. So, but it was in part because we started talking to Garmin while we were crowdfunding.
Hey, G.
All right, yeah, so if we pushed to get over the line, it would have created some problems, actually. It would have been difficult then to have all these commitments. But I think in your case, you know, you need to have a story. You need to constantly have a story to tell. The press just loves a story, and they love angles. And something I found with our campaign was how hungry the press is for these stories. And if you can be strategic, I guess, about making sure that the story remains fresh, you know, that it's not just a product, you know. Now they must write something about this product. Once they've written it, you know, it's done. There needs to be a narrative. There needs to be a bigger play, a master plan, or a, you know, that's what I guess what Elon Musk is doing. He's always adding to his story. It's making it so easy for the press to write about it. But it's very instructive experience, I'm sure, for you. And that's the best thing to do, is put yourself in a position to learn. So don't be too discouraged. You've earned an MBA in crowdfunding now. That focuses the mind like nothing else.
Okay, final question, yeah.
Yeah, my question is simple. I'd like to ask you, for hardware developers, should they develop a hardware and they are faced with the challenge of being bought by a bigger company, what advice would you give them on the basis of your experience? You have done it, and your company has been sold by Garmin. coming from South African background, of which we want some people that we can look up to and tell a story. If they are faced with kind of a challenge, what should they do? Should they sell their company or should they not?
Okay, so I just want to check. So is your question, what should people do if you're developing a hardware company? Okay, how they should do that properly then. Well, I would say firstly, for any kind of acquisition possibility, you need to be squeaky clean. You have to have your ducks in a row. So you can't have pirated software and, you know, contracts with maybe a guy doing a PCB for you that's not in place, you know, IP issues on that. So your contracts need to be really good. You cannot have like skeletons in the closet around in the closet around your IP. Okay, that's critical. In terms of should you sell or not, I mean that's a decision for every business to make, you know, based on valuation and your strategy. But you know, from South Africa, if you're being bought by a US company or a British company, it tends to be worth it because the valuations over there are just at least 10 times bigger than what you would have here. So it makes a lot of sense. It's a great way for us actually to get value, to sort of get bang for buck for your effort. It's, you know, you can. Basically what you have is selling those products here is only going to take you that far. Someone selling that in the US, they're going to be able to sell 100 times more. And that's why they're willing to pay you that upside. So you're getting more than you would ever get trying to sell your product locally yourself. So typically a good thing.
Guys, let's give Franz a big round of applause. So just a few things as we close up. Firstly, just thank the team for putting this together. Thank the sponsors. I'd like to call out the guys from the Fruit Cube who said they're going to give this, something small for you here, Franz.
Thanks, Mo. Just firstly, I want to say thanks. We're very pleased to be part of Startup Grind, so thank you, Mo, for the opportunity. Just to give you some context, the Fruit Cube is a company that specializes in providing fresh fruits on a weekly basis to companies around Cape Town. And really the aim is to allow our customer companies to provide their staff with easy access to healthy snacks in the workplace. So please do look us up on thefruitcube.com. Franz, we're very pleased to be offering you the gift tonight, and we'll be following you up with a delivery to your office next week with another box. Thank you.
Okay, the second thing is I know all of you guys want that watch. So Marwan, can you please come up here and announce who the winner is?
Okay, so we got some good tweets tonight, a lot of good tweets. I wanted to actually find out if you have a second watch that you want to give away. Okay, probably not. Okay, so one guy almost won the competition. So he's the runner-up because his tweets were really funny. But he only has like 9 tweets. He doesn't have an egg as his profile, but he does have a photo. I'm actually trying to see him in the audience. Herman. So you have a history of 9 tweets. So you probably created his account now just to win the competition. And he has something here when we announced the competition, furiously Googling how to win tweet competition. Poor dev life, start CPT. And he has this: having a life and authentic relationships sound really awesome. Can you send me the link to the GitHub repo? So you almost won. So you were runner-up. Unfortunately, runners-up, they don't get anything. And the winner of the competition is actually someone I was joking with earlier today, and I told him he's not going to win it because he was trying to win it by sweet talking me, but he actually tweeted some great tweets. So, Jacqueline, you're the winner of the competition. Let me share your tweet. Let me share your tweet. And you can come up and get it. Living congruently with your values. There are no dress rehearsals in life, so you just have to make it happen. Be the hippo in your own life. And I think that's amazingly true for anybody starting a startup or running a business. And we really need to be the hippos within our own lives. We need to run through, create the paths, and find the things that we're looking for. So thank you so much for your great tweet. You can come get your watch. There you go.
All right, thank you so much, guys, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. There's still going to be some drinks and stuff outside, and you guys can carry on networking if you want. But you guys have been a great audience. Thank you so much.